Angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV.
Hollywood is often a lot more like real life than you and I would like to think. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. In this case, I'm specifically talking about a scene from the movie Indiana Jones, where they hide the Ark of the Covenant inside a big warehouse where top men have been assigned to research it, except it's not really research at all. It's just hidden away. That's what we're going to talk about, the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. And joining us on the panel today, Skywatch TV CEO and best-selling author Tom Horn.
Good to be here.
And the author of a new book looking at the transhumanism movement, Terminated, The End of Man is Here, and a new DVD that follows in the footsteps of his series called True Legends. Interesting thinker and another fascinating topic, Forbidden History Revealed, Episode 1, The Egyptian Presence in the Americas. Could be presidents, too, for all we know. And the Pacific Rim, we welcome back to the program Steve Quayle. Steve, welcome.
Hey, Derek. Good to be with you. And Tom, delighted to be with you.
This is a fascinating, alternate history, alternate archaeology, forbidden archaeology is a subject I love. You know me, I'm a history nerd and thoroughly enjoyed the True Legends expedition to Rome and Sardinia. If anything, you and Tim Alberino undersold what we saw on the island of Sardinia. So, the Egyptian presence in the Americas, the Egyptians made it here to North America?
Well, they absolutely did. And not only did they come to the Americas, they pretty much circumnavigated the entire Pacific Rim. Under Ptolemy III, they sent out a flotilla, a massive flotilla of Egyptian ships. Now, it's interesting because the navigator Maui, from which the island Maui is named, had a mathematical device that they knew the difference between the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere, and they were able to leave this mark on the caves, for instance, in Indonesia, in South America, and in the United States. They were gone for years and years. By the way, they never returned back to Egypt. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating is a former prime minister of Egypt named Nubar Pasha. Nubar Pasha, at the same time that John Wesley Powell is taking over the reins of the Smithsonian, made the request to the Smithsonian and the U.S. government that all Egyptian artifacts be returned to Egypt or destroyed. Now, he was, I think, a 3-term president. So Tom Horn, Skywatch TV, and Gen 6, we went to the desert Southwest for our former Holocaust of Giants. We went to hear the legends and the stories of not only stargates, but also the presence of the ancient ones in the Four Corners region of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that we're dealing with now the reality, Derek, of that illustration. You named it so, you defined it so perfectly, that in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Ark of the Covenant is stored, I have a statement. All history has been covered up and covered over. So Tom, lay out, if you will, just how we were trying to get some Smithsonian, and we tried, we did everything we could, and now it sounds like we got one.
Yeah, it actually started at one of our conferences a couple of years ago, and a man came up and introduced himself to me, said that he had read the book On the Path of the Immortals, and that he could possibly open doors for us, for me and you, to be able to go into the Four Corners area and meet with some of the tribal leaders, and we did. He was able to do that, and he also talked with one of the retired curators from the Smithsonian, a guy that's evidently legendary among their leaders there. He's in his 80s now, so when you get into your 80s, you don't care what nobody thinks, because what can they do? Kill you? You're going to die anyway. So This guy told him that he agreed that the time had come to kind of peel back some of the onion layers and discuss what is stored in these numerous Smithsonian-owned warehouses that are huge warehouses. There's literally millions and millions of antiquated objects that have been collected probably from around the world, but especially here in early America where they're digging up the Indian mounds. They're finding what is reported in numerous newspapers in the late 1800s, the early 1900s of very tall humans, right? 12 foot tall, some of them almost as much as 20 foot tall, a lot of 8, 9, and 10 foot tall. And where did those bones go? Well, everybody knows they were spirited away to the Smithsonian. The question is, you know, why were they interested? And some people believe that the Powell Doctrine is all about trying to control the creation narrative. In other words, that if you find the bones of the giants, that doesn't point to evolution, that actually points to the story in the Bible, that there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. But there could be other reasons, why they would want to hide those bones away. Some of the stuff we're learning now in technology about how far back they can trace the genetic makeup just through the use of bones alone. So what is it that they're trying to do? That's a pretty big question. And that's kind of where your new documentary picks up on some of those themes, except that you were able to accomplish something nobody's done until now. And that is somebody who would know what's actually stored away in these warehouses.
One of the things, Derek, Tom, and the entire audience is that we tried to do it our way, yet a man listened. He listened to our conference last year. Isn't this how, this is so cool. Listen, I can't do backflips, but this is a backflip moment. And he said, I heard you guys talking. He said, the Lord prompted me. He said, you need to get a hold of Steve and tell him what you know. His words, not mine. Very humble man, but very well connected. And by the way, I was able to check out his bona fides. He went overboard, and in the film we had to obscure his face and obscure his voice because, you know, very, very well known, very well connected. I mean, so well connected that I have to do my best not to give it away. But he talked about being taken to the Smithsonian to verify the requests of Dr. Troy Payway and his family, that Dr. Troy Payway, one of the most famous geologists in the history of the United States. By the way, he was world famous for permafrost and everything. And he was allowed access to certain areas of the Grand Canyon. Well, upon his death, Dr. Payway's brain was to be, he wanted it in a vat of whatever formaldehyde or some kind of a fix next to John Wesley Powell's brain. So in addition to this friend going to validate that and verify the family, you know, that was like 20 years ago after the death of Dr. Payway, he was given a tour of all the objects that they have denied, the Smithsonian has denied all these years. Egyptian artifacts, the presence of giants, up to 21 feet, Tom. He was told that specifically. He was only shown the bones of some 9-footers. Well, I'd be happy with that. But the point is that his eyewitness testimony of Egyptian mummies, of Egyptian artifacts, and because he traveled as a child to, like, he traveled the world, had been to the Louvre, he'd been to the British Museum, he knew what Egyptian artifacts were, and even the gentleman that was giving him the tour of the Smithsonian. Now listen, let me set this up. It's a giant warehouse, one of many, that's out of the outskirts of Washington, D.C. It's 4 levels down, about 100 yards long, with each level 100 yards long, and then annexes the equivalent going off, kind of like a starfish. And they were taken down to the 4th level. You have to have security clearances, and they have flash arresters on all the switches because everything there is formaldehyde or volatile, you know, everything is ready, a flash point. He goes into great detail, and in the video, he established something that is absolutely beyond, in my opinion, amazing. And that is the fact that there were scientists in there extracting DNA, you know, those 3 important letters of the alphabet, from an Egyptian mummy. Well, we know where that's going. And so, Tom, it's interesting because it took Branson last year to act as a springboard for somebody to come forward. And Derek, I find you made a statement, 80, you don't care what they say. I should have waited until 80. I adopted that plan too early in my life. But the point is that we are now at this critical juncture, where so much, Derek, like when you were, in Sardinia, and the overwhelming evidence of giants and all this. So why is this relevant in biblical time, or how is this even relevant?
Well, that's a key question.
Yeah, the key question is because Jesus told us specifically that there's nothing that's been hidden that isn't going to be made known or be revealed, And also because it's time for God to set the record straight. We've had, in my opinion, the last 6,000 years of distorted history with, researchers and investigators tapping into, if you will, bits and pieces. But now, Tom, I think largely through your efforts, through my efforts, through all of our efforts, and we're not the only two guys, but what I'm saying is this, we have been directed. I've said this, Derek, and I think I've said it on this program once or twice. I believe twice. The thing is, Tom's been on, we're both on this engine of truth. He's on one rail, we're on another rail, and I'm on another rail, and we end up together in the desert Southwest. And now we end up in the transhumanism moment. That just shows me something. God does not do anything on a singular basis. And the multitude of witnesses, the multitude of evidence, the overwhelming evidence, and now, you think about it, just through the modern molecular technology and the understanding of genetics, could people even understand this, okay? They just dismiss it. And Derek, that's a question I get. I literally get emails saying, well, how is this relevant to salvation? Mm-hmm. For this purpose, Jesus Christ was manifested that he might destroy the works of the evil one. And people don't understand the hybridization of everything. As you read your ancient history, and as Tom and we talk about all this stuff, everything has been hybridized. And if they had their way, they'd hybridize us out of existence. Yet, God will still have the elect, and the elect are those who give their hearts to Jesus Christ, that he'll keep from deception. But remember, Jesus' words were, "See, be not deceived." So the greatest deception in the world. And how does this all, it all ties in to the works you've done on the Vatican and the great cover-up in history.
Well, as Steve says, and said on this program previously, those who control the past, control history, they control the future. We'll continue our conversation about the new DVD, Forbidden History Revealed, Episode 1, the Egyptian Presence in the Americas and the Pacific Rim, when Skywatch TV returns after this.
Global experts are now debating whether humanity should fear the rise of AI assassins. Will transhumanism, singularity, and demonically infused killer robots be the last onslaught of Satan in an attempt to destroy every human on Earth? Learn what the Bible has to say on this very urgent topic now in the new, oversized book, Terminated, by legendary author Steve Quayle. In Terminated, you will learn why hundreds of artificial intelligence experts believe that humanity will soon experience gigadeath at the hands of autonomous killing machines. Why hybridizing humans is thrusting us toward a golden age of mythical monsters and godlike humans. And what Jesus declared about God's plan to shorten the days here on earth, because if not, there would be no flesh left alive. Plus, when you order Terminated from the Skywatch TV store, you'll also receive the brand new documentary movie from Gen 6 Productions, Forbidden History Revealed. The Egyptian presence in the Americas and the Pacific Rim, the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. Now, for the first time in history, you'll watch an eyewitness account of actual Egyptian artifacts and giant skeletons that were excavated from the Grand Canyon and burial mounds across the U.S. and South America, stored for over 100 years in a secret underground Smithsonian warehouse. This full-length feature film also asks the questions: why is the DNA of giant mummies and viable skeletons being extracted by the militaries of the world? Was a living 21-foot giant captured in 1877 with the most unusual features ever noted? And will the giants of yesterday become the super soldiers of tomorrow? These two incredible new works are available together for a special donation of only $50 now at the SkywatchTVStore.com. So don't delay. Order Terminated, the Steve Quayle special offer, online now or call 1-844-750-4985.
Welcome back to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. Please, if you've not subscribed yet to the Skywatch TV magazine, you get great content about stuff like this that, okay, you can still be saved by the blood of Jesus Christ if you don't understand how history has been twisted and manipulated throughout the past to manipulate what you believe about the future. But it sure helps make sense of some of the crazy things happening in our world today. You'll find out more information about how you can subscribe to Skywatch TV magazine. Get it delivered every month to your door at skywatchtvstore.com. We're talking with Steve Quayle, author of the new book Terminated and producer of the new film Forbidden History Revealed, about, well, history that has been covered up. Coming back to the Egyptian journeys around the world, Ptolemy III was 3rd century BC or thereabouts. What evidence is there of their presence in the Americas, that they actually circumnavigated the globe? And again, why is that significant? Why would there be a desire to cover up that bit of history?
Well, first of all, it changes who can claim the country for whom. Okay, I mean, Columbus may have done his thing in 1492, but the bottom line is there's 4,000 years prior to that with the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, and a lot of evidence direct even back to, obviously the fallen angels had pretty much the run of the earth both before the flood of Jeremiah. The earth is destroyed, Genesis 1:1, 1:2. God did not create the earth initially that way. It became that, those words chaos, void and chaotic, tohu and bohu in Hebrew. So they want it covered up. The amount of evidence now is staggering. And what's the archaeoastronomical positioning of all these different landforms around the world lining up with Pleiades? Interestingly enough, the constellations that the landforms line up with are mentioned in the book of Job. And we know that the book of Job is the oldest recorded writing in the Old Testament. So the cover-up is imperative because, again, you quoted, I quote Orwell, you quote me quoting Orwell, but the point is that we're now at the position where they're ready to spring the trap. The trap is going to be set, that the aliens created us. I was contacted, you'll appreciate this, by the most famous show on ancient aliens, okay? And they wanted to talk to me about giants and stuff. And I said, the only way I will talk to you on the subject matter is if you let me make one statement and guarantee in writing that it will appear in the film. And it was simply this: what you guys call ancient aliens, I call fallen angels. And I said, you use the book of Revelation to try and make the extraterrestrial presence known. Well, guess what? On a Thursday they agreed, and by Friday morning they disagreed, okay? So the thing is, and for the record, people in the jungles of Peru know about ancient aliens, but they never heard about Jesus Christ. They never heard about the Genesis account. People in Sardinia, by the way, they weren't really favorable to their presence there, because the idea is simply this, that Sardinia, as you know, being there, is the stepping point. I say this, it's the stepping diving board for giants, then their dispersal throughout the world. So why we're talking about this video at this point, when you say what evidence is there, Maui, Barry Fell, a Harvard-trained scientist, in his book America BC, Bronze Age America, Saga America, talked about the Maui epigraph, which was a kind of like, the way to explain it, maybe I can get a picture of it for you, but it's like a compass, and it's a split compass. It shows the navigational movements in the southern hemisphere obviously differ from the navigational movements in the northern hemisphere. And when they figured that out, well, obviously things changed in the history of circumnavigation. Even King Solomon's mines, everybody thinks they're in the Middle East. There's evidence that they were in the Americas, especially up around the Michigan area, the Great Lakes region. Some of the biggest copper mines in the world are up there, you know. And then in Chile, huge copper mines. Even in Utah, the old Kennecott copper mine, one of the largest open pit mines in the world. So the evidence through artifacts, oral tradition, written tradition, and even cave drawings, cave paintings, overwhelmingly say that they were here, along with the legends and all of the different artifacts that have been found. And the National Geographic used to carry, Tom and I were talking about this, carry certain objects.
Yeah, you mentioned the National Geographic and evidence for very early circumnavigation of the Earth. I was sitting in a doctor's office, this is probably 20 years ago, Derek, waiting for my turn to see the doctor, and it was National Geographic magazine, and I picked it up, and I'm just thumbing through it, and it had an article in there where it showed this great big brass plate, platter, whatever that had been found, and it was inscribed to Baal of the Canaanites. But guess where they found this? It was the Phoenician language, whatever. They found it buried with an Indian chief, and it had been buried for hundreds of years. And they were doing this excavation, and among all the other just tribal stuff, beads and whatever that were buried with this Indian chief, was this platter. And the whole National Geographic article was, how in the world did a brass platter dedicated to Baal of the Canaanites wind up buried? And their whole theory was that we know that the Phoenicians were seafarers, and they went into this big long thing about how either intentionally or maybe they got blown off course and accidentally. That was their theory. They must have wound up here, and then they were trading with the Indians for food or whatever, and this chief maybe was all excited about this brass platter, but they had no idea, in fact, how this, this Indian tribe wound up with this very antiquated Canaanite dedicatory plaque. But what it did illustrate was the likelihood that early navigation that reached the Americas had indeed happened.
Yeah, a little more complicated. They were a little more educated than we give them credit for. Well, as you say, Orwell's statement that if you control history, control the past, you control the future, and that's the whole thesis or philosophy behind the modern
operating principle.
Yeah, behind the transhumanist movement.
Correct.
If they can convince. They are convinced, but if they can convince our children and grandchildren that we are not created, and certainly not created in the image of God, as his image bearers, as moral agents on earth, then there is no harm in tinkering with the design of humanity, with DNA, because, in fact, there's a moral imperative to do so, because if there's no God, then there's no eternal life, and we have a moral imperative to extend humanity, to human life, to as long as possible, to try to defeat death with science. And that's the reason behind the Transhumanism and the Hybrid Age Conference that you, Gen 6 Productions, Skywatch TV, are producing in Branson coming in September.
It is the most critical point. I've been at this for a long time, at this researching, writing and stuff. It is the most critical point in our history because it determines our future, it determines everything. And this will be sold as a bill of goods. But again, when you look at defense appropriations, I watch that stuff. Autonomous killing machines, I call them AKMs. I said, forget AK-47s, you got to be into autonomous killing machines. When you're talking about DPKMs, demon-possessed killing machines, and you quoted the Greek word disembodied, a daemon, the demon is a disembodied spirit. Jesus talked about that, and he dealt with it, and he gave his believers the power to cast out demons. You know what the least probably popular teaching conference would be on deliverance, okay? Because everybody would have to go to a prequel before they show up. The thing is that we're talking about a very wise and brilliant. Some of these things are brilliant. Now, I maintain this, and don't get mad at Tom or Derek about it. I maintain that the fallen angels literally rule the world in the same Ephesians 6 mode from behind the scenes. I believe that we're seeing replacements that are past as humans, okay? And I'm telling everybody, keep your eyes on facial movements and things. Look, this isn't booga, booga, booga. We know that the fallen angels do something. What do they hang out? The pool hall waiting for the lake of fire? No, they don't. They're out there. They're doing the same thing. They're destroying. They're promising wealth. They're giving wealth. But isn't it fascinating, you guys, that the lead people of the billionaires are funded by a community that obviously is into the occult, the intelligence community, and they want to destroy 6 billion people now. They want 500 million. Well, as the population rises. So this conference in Branson, Missouri, September 14th through the 16th, is just about sold out. And for those of you that are other places around the world, you want to live stream it. And if you live stream it, you can get last year's conference. You can download video on demand.
Oh, that's
so
a deal.
We're presenting it. And again, we're limited to how many people we can do live streaming with. So please, ladies and gentlemen, this will change your life. It will change your paradigm, and it will give your children and grandchildren a future. I've got like, I don't know, 4 grandchildren. I don't want to get the count wrong. The point is that I look at them and I see them smile, I see them play, and I see them giggle, and everything that makes kids kids. And I think there are entities out there, and the entities behind, I don't care who it is, the biggest and the most wealthy individuals in the world ultimately have a contempt. Some of them even were atheists until they started talking about God, but the God they're talking about is Lucifer.
And then at the conference, you're speaking there, I'm speaking there. There's a whole panel too, the one that Timothy and some of these younger,
Yes.
So even young people will find this to be cool. Some of the best known young bloggers and people that have their own radio programs are also going to be there. Hugo de Garis is going to be there, so they'll be hearing from experts, not people who just have an opinion, but they have a qualified opinion.
Right, and this year we're going to do something else too. Sharon Gilbert's going to be there, and she's going to be speaking on molecular biology and genetics, and ladies and gentlemen, that will be a treat. So it's going to be a much different, I think, a very intense, and by the way, I'm going to do something different too. I'm going to have Derek interview me for 90 minutes, so he does a wonderful job of keeping me on track.
And as I understand it, there's going to be a giant Terminator.
There's a
standing
giant
right
Terminator
next to you, and out in the foyer, a huge recreation of a Nephilim giant.
13-foot recreation of an actual giant that was detailed to Buffalo Bill Cody. And when you hear the creation story that Cody was given, it's right out of the Genesis.
And then
account.
also the giant skull.
The giant skull.
Recreation of, based on what?
Based on the Spanish conquistadors, chroniclers of the actual size. Right?
Fascinating stuff, and gives people a sense of scale. As we found out, when you actually go someplace and see something for yourself, whether it's a recreation of one of these skulls or giants, or go see these archaeological digs, until you actually see it with your own eyes, it really doesn't fit into context.
Right,
so,
you can't put it in context.
So take advantage of that. Again, September 14th through the 16th, GENSIX.com, gen6.com. Steve Quayle, the man behind the new DVD, Forbidden History Revealed, the Egyptian Presidents in the Americas and the Pacific Rim, and of course the new book, Terminated, The End of Man is Here. With Tom Horn, I'm Derek Gilbert. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. This is Skywatch TV.